So the title of my talk is The State of Cryptocurrency Today. And I think it would be nice just to talk about where we are, where we're going, and what the reality is on the ground. So the cryptocurrency movement is inspiring. And we have a lot of energy here. A lot of energy, people are building, people are doing all of these good things. It represents a lot of opportunity. And with that comes a lot of exuberance. So the current value of cryptocurrency is about 250 billion. Where does that value come from? The reality today is that value comes from speculation, for the most part. That shouldn't be the goal, obviously. The goal should be something we can use, something that is useful. I think that's what a lot of people believe in this space. I think a lot of people are have a lot of common ideals, common goals. So the thing about this is, I think in order to know what we need to do is we need to actually define what these goals are, right? In order to achieve the objectives we want to achieve, what change we want to affect in the world. So I think this is very important to actually understand this. So, for instance, I would say that the goal is not decentralization. Decentralization is a means to an end. Right? What is that end? And I think people have different goals in mind. I think, some of these things I think a lot of people in this space agree with is voluntarism, freedom, censorship resistance, having a system with no central points of failure or control, right? So how do we achieve these objectives? These objectives are not necessarily achieved by a philosophy of maximization of decentralization. Decentralization exists on a spectrum. And if we maximize that, then we lose the purpose of decentralization. Why do we want to have a decentralized system? So I think and I think different projects have different goals, obviously, but Bitcoin as a peer-to-peer electronic cash, as a digital gold. This is a worthy goal. And this is something that is worthy to inspiring towards. But I think what we see in cryptocurrency today a lot is we have a lot of ideologues. And you have to be very careful not to get tunnel vision here, right? A lot of people are very stuck on their particular projects, be it Ethereum, be it Bitcoin, be it Bitcoin Cash, be it Dash, be it Monero, right? But I think it's important to look at the whole and not to become overly ideological. Because if we do that, we miss the big picture. And something that concerns me is we see a lot of cult-like behavior, that it becomes a religion for a lot of people. And that's understandable. But at the same time, I think we really need to guard ourselves against that type of mentality, and also realize that what this is, it is currently a bubble that we're all in. And so we need to be aware of this. We need to be aware that most projects out there are not legitimate projects. Investors need to beware of what is going on. So to the topic of the state of cryptocurrency today, I think I think high fees are a problem if we want to have a currency. And I think something happened very recently, which I thought that was interesting, is that Ethereum is having some major scaling problems due to technical limitations, which is different to limit a system by design, obviously. Even though I'm confident that a lot of these problems will be solved through things like Casper, specifically with a proof of stake system that blocks are deterministic, means that propagation times become less of an issue. So this potentially solves the problem that Ethereum is going through. Now, another large project, EOS, I'm not sure how closely everyone's been following this, but EOS claims to be a more efficient, to be a cheaper blockchain to use. And currently, due to some really key problems in its design, it's more expensive to use than Ethereum and Bitcoin. And this is due to speculation around the mechanism of RAM within the system. So this is the reality. There are blockchains that function well today, but that's not where the majority of value lies. And there are a lot of technical problems that need to be solved, a lot of technical problems that people are trying to solve, and some of these problems won't be solved. So I think it's important to be realistic and to actually look at things for what they are, and not to get caught up in a religion of belief. Because if we create a religion of belief, we also become disconnected from these objectives. And that I think is a great loss. That's something that's a point that I wanted to make. And I'm very confident in this space. I think it's very important to be realistic about what this is, where we are, and where we're going. Not ideology for ideology's sake, but a path with clear objectives in mind. I think I'll start taking questions early here, now that I've made my point. Do you have any questions? Yeah?
You're saying that should not take it.
Do you have a mic? One moment. Yeah. Repeat the question, please.
So you were saying that one should not take a tunnel vision
Yes.
in order not to lose the focus on the bigger picture.
Exactly.
What's that bigger picture according to you?
Well, I think that's different for each person, and I think this comes down to, the ethics that you have, the kind of world you want to live in, and we're all free to make that choice. But I think something that a lot of us here have in common is, I mentioned a few: censorship resistance, financial sovereignty, creating systems that are more efficient, improving humanity. Something for me that I'm very excited about is the potential of governance, actually. I actually see blockchain technology not only replacing most financial systems, but also over time replacing many functions of government as well. And this creates, really good efficiencies. And even more interestingly, I think the way that I see it, it's a political evolution in many ways, is that for the last few hundred years, we've in political philosophy, we've created more and more separations of powers to put less power into less hands. So the concept of decentralization is in many ways an extension of that evolution of politics. Yeah. So yes, I think we each have our goals, but I think something, like I said, censorship resistance and, making the world a better place. And that means something else for different people. So this is why I'm also, in many ways, an anti-maximalist, is people are going to make different choices, and people should be free to make those choices. and that's part of the beauty of this system as well. All right, another question. Yeah.
I think I agree with what you say, but at the same time, I see myself trying to listen to all the noise. There's a lot of noise, and it's getting more and more complex. And then at a certain point, you investigate something and you close it because you don't want to investigate it every month again and again. So it could resemble a religion. Sometimes you just take things for a fact, even when you can't know it for a fact. And I think it's part of canceling out the noise. So yeah, maybe there will be tribalism and people going in this direction, people going in that direction. And I think the only thing you can do is be polite in conversation and dialogue and trying to understand what someone else is. What is your value? What is your interest? And, yeah, that's the way to go forward for me.
Absolutely. I mean, there is a lot of noise, and it's actually very challenging to get a good grasp of the space. Like, we have a lot of expert disagreement as well within cryptocurrency. So yeah, it becomes very confusing for people, especially people that are not doing this full time, essentially. So like, I'm running a cryptocurrency fund, and we have 6 people, researching cryptocurrency full time. Trying to keep track of all the developments and the projects we're invested in, and new projects along. We're all sprinting. For an individual to do this is very challenging, especially if you still have a day job. So this is part of the challenge. But I think, part of this is like, how do you filter that noise, right? And I think part of that is, there has to be a degree of critical thought, in where we, independently come to our own decisions. But I think maybe one of the best ways to do that is to hear all sides of the argument and to consider that, for yourself, trying our best not to be dogmatic, and coming to these conclusions, which is why I'm maybe so outspoken on some things, whereas, I'm not following the crowd. I'm not just doing what everyone else thinks. We need to come to these conclusions ourselves, and yeah.
Maybe I have to clarify what I mean by noise is, by noise, I also mean an overwhelming amount of facts and truth. So even if it's all true, then it's overwhelming, apart from the bad noise.
Yeah, it really is. But I think, in many ways, I don't think for people to use this system, they don't need to understand every aspect of it. In the same sense that people use the euro today, and most people certainly do not understand every aspect of that economic system either. But I think within the space and within, developers and stakeholders and miners and people that make decisions, within that, group, it is important that we do have a good understanding, and it's important that we, can have a high quality of debate and a high quality of understanding. And I think that's where it's more important. And for these groups of people, for these specialists, I think this is achievable. And at the same time, I think users can be more pragmatic in many ways. They can use what works. And I think something we used to say in the Bitcoin movement a few years back is that we don't just want to bring users in that come in because of ideology. We actually want to create use cases where people come in because it benefits them to use it, because they need to use it, because it's better for them, nothing to do with ideology. That in many ways should also be the goal. And by bringing more people in, the system grows, it becomes more secure, it becomes more valuable. And that also brings about, the changes that the ideologues and specialists want to see, how the incentives are set up in these systems underlying. Got a question over there.
You mentioned that some problem won't be solved. In your opinion, which problem are unsolvable?
So I'm going to be very careful saying that a problem is unsolvable. Historically, that that's been proven wrong. But I think so let's say like I was just in a lightning panel, right? So for instance, the liquidity problem that I discussed with the Lightning Network, how such a large amount of capital needs to be locked up, right? I mean, in one sense, you could say that has solved the problem. But I mean, let's define the problem. What are we trying to build? You know, what are we trying to solve, right? I'm not convinced I will be able to, you know, buy my coffees everywhere with such a system, so that it doesn't solve that problem. You know, it doesn't solve the, you know, it doesn't replace on-chain transactions. But I mean, more unsolved problems would be things like decentralized computing is currently unsolved. Decentralized storage, I mean, there's a lot of projects doing it, but they haven't really figured out a lot of these issues yet as well. Tangles. Actually, a tangle is still an unsolved problem. Like, I think many of you must be aware of IOTA. So, you know, the idea of a tangle is very interesting, but, you know, it might just be infeasible in terms of its design. I mean, you can do it, but it doesn't make sense, right? So, current tangle designs require a central coordinator to allow the chain to reconverge. So, now these are 4 examples of unsolved problems, I would say. Does that answer your question, or please?
I was wanting to see what you consider unsolvable.
Yeah. Well, I actually
Yes. Yeah, it said like storage and computing, which are problems.
Yeah.
Those you mentioned are mostly solutions which may not work.
Yeah.
Unsolvable problem.
Yeah.
And I think even on decentralized computing, don't you think that key tracking verification method like Ruby to solve that?
Maybe. I'll see it when I believe it. And at the same time, you know, we're also invested in some decentralized computing projects because they might solve the problem, right? But they also might not. You know, some things are just infeasible or just not competitive. You know, in these cases, when there are better solutions, like let's say decentralized storage ends up being, you know, significantly more expensive than you know, something like Dropbox or any of these other, you know, legacy solutions that we have. You know, I would argue then it is an unsolved problem, essentially, because you're not, you know, achieving the objectives you want to achieve with such a system. All right. Next question. Okay. Question over here? Yeah. Another question? Come pick my brain.
I'm wondering what do you think other faults that U.S. have besides the speculation of the wrong price?
Yeah, this is very interesting. So I do actually expect to be some blockchain forks of EOS, actually. And EOS specifically, I think it has some very major design oversights, which, you know, might be solved, might be changed, might not be. I think it's going to cause a lot of conflict in the meantime. But I would say specifically for EOS, the idea of arbitrators, because EOS has an arbitration system, essentially. Well, it's supposed to have an arbitration system where the decisions of the delegates, you know, I mean, this is under heavy debate now, you know, can be decided by an arbitrator, which is an external party from the protocol. Now for me, this seems to be completely missing the point of a blockchain. You know, one of the points of a blockchain is that we can actually reach a consensus. We can actually reach a decision with parties that are appropriately incentivized to make the best decision. So to try to build some sort of super decision-making process above that seems to be completely missing the point. And that's causing a lot of conflict within EOS right now. Another problem within EOS is they have expressly gone against the concept of vote buying, which is a bit of a negative way to phrase it. But the idea is that if you stake your coins with a delegate, right, and the delegate gets a reward for those coins, that reward is actually not shared with the stakers. So this actually accelerates the concentration of power for the delegates. And also, you know, I think certain incentives are very strong. So they're trying to avoid vote buying within the system. But what this in reality has done is that large whales just end up buying equity in the delegates. And then the delegates essentially, that's effectively vote buying, but it's just become more exclusive. Instead of everyone having the opportunity to share in the inflation, it only becomes the whales who are essentially, dominating the decisions of the delegates. So this is another fundamental flaw. I'll mention a third one here, which is more of a political one, but EOS has a constitution. And, in my view, a constitution, that should be a rather sacred concept. And this constitution is being changed, even ignoring the rules for changing the constitution within the old constitution. I just think that politically, these are not good design decisions. So potential forks of EOS, will change some of these aspects. I know that at least one of the forks of EOS will remove the arbitrator at least. But I'd also like them to see remove the restriction on vote buying, because, like I said, people just go around the system anyway, and it essentially just becomes more corrupt. It's not solving the problem. Does that answer the question?
I think also because
it also has a very complex history, and initially it has very the way that the developer have shares are much less perfect than the delegate, that makes them discourage the vote buy. But at the same time, to decide whether you can buy vote or not should be used the DPoS as well. Instead, bid master just write a git commit say, you cannot buy vote.
Exactly, yeah. It's the delegates are the authority, or the delegates, the stakers, miners, depending on the system, are the authority. That's the whole point of these systems. Exactly.
So right now it's like there are parallel constructions. On the one hand, you have those delegate, but on the other hand, the block one has significant influence
Exactly.
over where the project is.
Block one pledged not to use their coins for voting. And as of a week ago, they are now using their coins for voting. And I believe only about 30% is being staked, and Block one controls 10% of that. So, yeah, that's definitely some massive power there. That's very, very flawed in my view. But still an interesting project. And I'd like to add to that, even though I'm a huge Lightning critic, my criticisms are actually more around it not being suitable for certain use cases. So actually, I do support Lightning, and I think it's great that people are working on this technology. All more power to them. I think Lightning is actually very useful for services where you already have a different trust model. So for instance, a video streaming company, let's say, I could send coins to a channel, and then I could stream, say, video per second and pay that way. And I already have it locked up with them. I'm already trusting that company. So in that case, actually, an application of Lightning makes a lot of sense. It's just for most applications, as far as I can see it does not make sense. Not meaning to discourage all of the great development on Lightning, because it is fascinating. I think I have time for one more question, I believe. Let me check. Yeah. One more question? Yeah, over there. Can we give this man a microphone?
So the theme of your talk is the state of cryptocurrencies. Would you care to elaborate what's your vision on the privacy issue, and what would differentiate some cryptocurrencies from others? Because most people don't seem to have that sense that some cryptocurrencies are not, in fact, private.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So I think it was, yeah. So there are, the interesting thing about a blockchain is that you can actually be extremely anonymous using something like Bitcoin, right? But it's actually very difficult. If you buy your coins on an exchange, it's not private, right? But if you buy your Bitcoins using cash, right, there's no link there, essentially. So in this way, Bitcoin can be used extremely privately. Unfortunately, because of the high fees, mixers have become somewhat unfeasible. So that's why alternative cryptocurrencies using mixers are actually a much better opportunity for privacy. And besides mixers, we also have currencies like Zcash and Monero, which obfuscate the links between transactions. But I think, as was stated in the talk yesterday, which is also very important to remember, it's not just about obfuscating the links between transactions. It's also about hiding your IP. And then you get into questions of, how secure is Tor, what kind of anonymity networks, can we use? And it becomes very complicated. So, cryptocurrency is not particularly anonymous, and if you do want to be very anonymous with cryptocurrency, it does take a lot of effort and expertise to actually do it properly. There's not really a plug-in solution for anonymity right now that's easy to use for everyday users. Yeah. But I think privacy coins are very interesting, and I think people should have that option. But I think because of mixers, it doesn't necessarily have to be built into the chain, at least in terms of the obfuscation of links. Yeah. But yeah, I really do believe in this movement, and I think we're building something very beautiful, something that's very profound in many ways and can change the world in many ways. At the same time, we just have to be realistic about, what this is now, and not be blind to, that we are in a bubble, And don't get me wrong, I'm invested in cryptocurrency myself because I believe in the long-term vision, And I believe in technology. The progress of technology doesn't really get stopped. So, this is the future, and I think we're all blessed being a part of this today. We really are. I think time for one more question, or let me check that. One more, I would say, and then I'll have to cut it off. All right. One more question, anyone? All right, I'll make a closing statement here. Yeah, I think, remind ourselves, look at the reality of things today, look at more than just promises, figure things out for yourself, be critical, understand that we're in this crazy time right now where we have projects with very little merit worth billions of dollars, This is crazy, But this is also part of how these things come into the world. Every great, technological innovation has been accompanied by a bubble. This is human folly, but this is how humans operate, and this is the effect of, the mass hysteria, the mass belief, the masses being inspired. But there is a lot to be inspired about at the same time. And that's something I really do believe in. And, we should all be grateful that we're here now and aware of what's going on. And, and keep in mind, I think most of us believe in freedom, believe in choice. I think we'll have multiple dominant blockchains because people are going to make different choices, and that's a good thing. One chain to rule them all seems rather totalitarian to me. So, yeah. All right. Thank you very much. It was an absolute pleasure. I hope you all had some thoughts there.